the call, rise above the shadows glow. Voices strong and hearts so wide.
As she laid down on her sick bed, Mariam was literally dying. Her body was weak, her hair falling out, and her ribs were visible through her skin. She was a shadow of her former self. Her mother and her best friend Charity sat beside her in tears, holding her hand. Was this her last moment? The room was heavy with sadness and gloom. Will she survive this? This particular story is based on a true story which happened somewhere in the busy street of Lagos. It's an emotional story filled with many twists and turns and valuable life lessons. So sit back, relax, and follow the story of Mariam, a girl whose true life experience will leave you with more questions than answers. In the busy streets of Lagos, in the vibrant town of Yaba, a town of lively people which was characterized with the boisterous local market, traffic thugs collecting dues from commercial bus drivers, and a closely knit community of hard-working people. There lived a young, beautiful, and curvy young lady named Mariam, who lived with her mother, a local food seller, popularly known as Mama Jojo, and her father, who was a drunk, who only wasted his wife's hard-earned money, drinking, playing bets, and gambling. Right from her tender age, Mariam had great ambitions to become someone in life, a person people would look up to. Despite her poor background, she never let that derail her dream. And so she lived her life every day, optimistic of a brighter future. She had only a younger brother, whom everyone fondly called Jojo, and they all lived together in a bungalow apartment in the dusty, noisy part of the neighborhood. Despite her parents' financial struggles, they appeared to live happily together as one big united family under the same roof. At least, that's how it seemed. But between Uche, Mariam's father, and Mariam, there was a dark secret, one that should never be uttered in public. Every time Mariam's mother stepped out to go to her food shop, Uche, Mariam's father, will stagger inside the house after spending hours drinking at a local bar, and then he would enter Mariam's room forcefully and have his way with her. Mariam would struggle and scream and cry, but her father, under the influence of alcohol, would force himself on her and rape her. This started when Mariam was just 14 years old, and it continued till she was 18. All this while she told her mother what her father was doing to her, her mother would not even believe her. And when her mother confronted Uche, Mariam's father, about the issue, he would just wave it off and claim Mariam didn't have a clue what she was talking about. This continued for years until one day Mariam was absolutely fed up with life, and then she made the decision to run away from her abusive father. The night was darker than usual, the kind of darkness that clung to her skin like the weight of all the secrets she had carried. Her footsteps were quick and steady, as though every shadow was her father chasing her down. Her body shivered as she clutched the small bag that held what little she could grab before sneaking out. Each step felt like an eternity, but she didn't look back. Her father's drunken roar still echoed in her ears, the feel of his rough hands still imprinted on her soul. She had no idea where exactly she was going to, but to her, anywhere was far better than the hell she currently found herself in. She had a friend named Charity who was formerly staying in her area, but now she had relocated to another part of Lagos called Grey Estates, a highbrow area, where the middle and upper class lived. The last time they saw each other was like 7 months ago, but they kept in communication. It was Charity she called, explaining her dire situation. When her friend heard what she had been through in the hands of her father, she was sorry for Mariam, and she told her that she was free to come around and stay for as long as she wanted. Charity's home was quite far. To Mariam, it felt like crossing an ocean. The small but expensively furnished apartment complex was quiet when she arrived. She knocked gently, barely able to catch her breath. Charity answered after a few knocks, her eyebrows raised in surprise. Without a word, Mariam collapsed into her arms. That night, while they sat together in the room, Mariam told her everything. Charity listened quietly, her eyes welled with tears as she couldn't believe what her friend's father did to her. An evil act, an abomination, one that must never be uttered in public. You can stay as long as you need, Charity said, lighting cigarettes and inhaling deeply. But life here isn't easy, Mariam. You have to figure out how to survive. Mariam nodded, but she had no idea what her survival would require. Meanwhile, back in Mariam's family house, her mother had returned back from her food shop, only to find Mariam's room empty with a note on the table. With shaky hands, she picked up the note. As she read what Mariam, her daughter, had written, the sting of fear gripped her. Dear mother, I know by now you would be wondering where I am. Don't fret too much, I had to leave this house and flee the horrible man I call a father. Remember, I reported him to you countless times about how he would come into my room and rape me repeatedly. But you never believed me. I can't bear it anymore, and so I've decided to run away before I lose my sanity. I would keep on communicating with you, and when I eventually settle down, I would invite you to where I am. Take heart, my dear mother, and please leave that man you call a husband. We will see each other soon, I promise. Your daughter, Mariam. As she read the letter, she sank deep into the chair in the room and burst into uncontrollable tears. Meanwhile, back in Grey Estates, in Charity's apartment, where Mariam was currently staying, the days that followed were a blur of emotions for Mariam. She felt free, yet hollow. The freedom she had longed for didn't come with peace, it came with uncertainty. Her life was so different from anything Mariam had ever known. Charity's world was one of late night clubs, music, and men, a constant vicious circle of promiscuous living. One evening, Charity sat by her makeup table. She was fixing her makeup, getting ready for another night out. You could come with me, she said casually. To where exactly? Miriam asked. To the nightclubs. Charity replied, You are beautiful and have a nice shape. Men will be swarming over you, I promise. Miriam's stomach twisted at the thought, but she remembered the life she had escaped. The haunting memories of her father, the cries that no one heard. What Charity was offering sounded dangerous, but it also seemed like control, a power she never had. The first night Miriam accompanied Charity to the nightclub, she was overwhelmed. The lights, the music, the men who all looked at her like they knew something she didn't. Charity navigated this world effortlessly, teaching her the unspoken rules of the night. Miriam found herself slipping into this life quicker than she anticipated. She wasn't like Charity. She didn't sell her body, but the temptation was there. Charity had everything Miriam didn't: a nice apartment, fancy clothes, and men who gave her huge sums of money and gifts. Even in the midst of all this, Mariam was still creating her online content. Her only solace was her TikTok account. She would normally do live streams and post videos of herself singing or dancing, and she was a very good dancer, by the way. Mariam began learning new tips and tricks from her friend Charity. It was a world apart from the life she knew in her little hometown. And yet, it was still Lagos, just a different side of it. As Miriam concentrated her efforts on her TikTok account, her following grew, and with it, a sense of validation. For the first time, people were watching her and they liked what they saw. She wasn't just a girl from the streets of Lagos anymore, she was becoming someone new. Rich men would flood her TikTok live and gift her. She steadily started making some moderate income from her posts and videos. Charity, her friend, was living like a queen. She drove a Benz Jeep, used iPhone 16 Pro Max, and wore expensive gold jewelries worth millions. But no matter how many hours Mariam spent online doing her live videos, she never made enough to live the lifestyle her friend was living. One day, while she was coming back from the market, she entered the room and Charity, her friend, was on the phone with a male client who needed her services. I can only come for 500,000 naira for the weekend, nothing less, Charity said, as she casually chewed gum while playing with her hair. When Mariam heard this, she was shocked. 500,000 naira just for one weekend. Wow. When Charity was done talking and preparing to go out, Mariam approached her and innocently asked her about the phone conversation, to which Charity replied, Yes, oh. Even that 500,000 naira is nothing. Just 3 days ago, a senator paid me 1 million naira just to spend the night with him. Like, seriously? Mariam asked, with her eyes wide with excitement and curiosity. Mariam thought to herself, how long would she do her live TikTok videos for before she would be able to make 1 million naira in just a single day? Well, enjoy yourself and buy something nice for me when coming back, Miriam said, as she eyed her friend with a little ting of jealousy. Sure thing, babe, Charity said as they hugged each other. Mariam couldn't get her mind off the discussion. She had seen the lifestyle her friend was living and the huge amounts of money she was making. She wasn't entirely sold on the idea of selling her body for money, but innocently, the seed was sown that day. After a couple of months, Mariam re-established communication with her mother, but she was sad to find out that her mother had been down with an illness for months, lying down in the hospital. A huge amount was needed to treat her, which Mariam didn't have. She turned to her friend Charity for help. Charity then told her that the only way she would be able to assist her was if she introduced her to a rich married man who would be dating her as a side chick and catering for all her needs. Mariam pondered the idea for a while. The cash rewards were guaranteed, but ultimately the thoughts of her ill mother lying down on the hospital bed influenced her final decision. She reluctantly agreed, and sooner rather than later, Mariam began following Charity to nightclubs to meet different men. She was amazed to find that in just 2 days, she had earned enough to cover the hefty hospital bill her mother had been struggling to pay for months. After a couple of days, Miriam's mother was discharged from the hospital. Her health was much better, and she was looking stronger. Miriam and her mother sat down to talk at a popular eatery. As they sat down to discuss, her mother looked straight at her with both admiration and a heartfelt guilt. "Honestly, I had no idea your wicked father did this to you," Miriam's mother said as she burst into tears. "Please forgive me, my daughter. All those years, I never believed you." "It's okay, Mama," Miriam said. "I've moved on from that. I'm doing fine now." Mariam held on to her and continued, "I will take care of you, Mama. Don't worry yourself. And the little I can do to support your sick husband, I will do." Miriam's father was diagnosed with liver cancer as a result of his excessive drinking habit. He didn't have much time to live. They exchanged numbers, and Miriam returned to Charity's house in Grey Estates. She was slowly adjusting to her new life, and within a few weeks, she had earned enough money to get her own place. The thrill was intoxicating, and soon she began to gradually immerse herself in her friend's promiscuous lifestyle. It was at one of these clubs that Mariam met Kofi. He was tall, dark, and handsome, with an air of mystery that intrigued her. Unlike the other men, Kofi wasn't overtly aggressive or crude. He approached her slowly, as though she were a rare gem he was studying. "You're different, and you dance beautifully," he said, his voice low, his accent smooth. Miriam smiled, unsure of how to respond. She had heard lines like that before, but there was something about Kofi that made her feel special. They talked for hours that night, long after the club had emptied and the music had faded. Kofi was a businessman from Ghana who was in Lagos on some work deals but spent a lot of time traveling. Miriam found herself drawn to him, perhaps because he wasn't like the other men she had met, or perhaps because she was desperate for something real in her life. Over the next few months, they kept in touch. Kofi would call her regularly, sending her money now and then to help with her expenses. He became a fixture in her life, a distant but comforting presence. Eventually, Kofi returned back to Ghana, but they kept in touch. All this while, they had not had any sexual encounter. Kofi was really a gentleman. He showered Mariam with love, not expecting anything in return. But as they say, all that glitters is not gold. And behind the handsome facade stood a dark secret that would seal Miriam's fate forever. One day, he suggested something that shook her. "Come to Ghana," he said. "I can set you up here. You'll make more money than you ever dreamed. My friends and I are starting something big, and I want you to be a part of it." Miriam was hesitant. Ghana was far, and she didn't know anyone there except Kofi. But as Charity flaunted her new clothes and jewelry, bragging about the money she was making, Miriam began to reconsider. What did she have to lose, she thought? With her friends' encouragement and Kofi's constant promises, Miriam finally agreed to go. What fate awaits Mariam in Ghana? And what dark secret is Kofi harboring beneath all his handsome looks? Find out this and many more intriguing questions in the concluding part of this epic true life story. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the part 2, till I bring to you another epic true life story. This is True Story Africa.
True story, Africa, hear the call. Rise above the shadows glow. Voices strong and hearts so wide. Together we'll take this ride.